The rare tree on her property was her prized possession, until the HOA deemed it too rare and ordered it destroyed. But when a renowned botanist stepped in to save the tree, the neighborhood conflict exploded into an all-out war of epic proportions. What no one expected was the shocking revelation that would expose the twisted motives behind the HOA's actions. Tears streamed down Natalie's face as she watched the giant crane lower the final pieces of her beloved oak tree into the mulch-filled dumpster. For years, the sprawling branches had provided cool shade and a home to countless birds and squirrels. But now, it lay in ruins, reduced to a pile of twisted wood and severed limbs. Her hands trembled as she confronted the HOA president, Margaret, who stood nearby supervising the destruction. "How could you do this?" Natalie cried. That tree was over 100 years old. It was a landmark in this neighborhood. Margaret's eyes narrowed coldly. The architectural committee deemed it a safety hazard, and since it's a protected species, we had no choice but to remove it. No choice? Natalie shot back. You didn't even give me a chance to appeal the decision. You just showed up with chainsaws and... We followed proper protocol. Margaret interrupted, her tone dripping with disdain. The tree posed a risk to the surrounding properties. It had to go. Natalie opened her mouth to protest, but the roar of the crane's engine drowned out her words. She watched helplessly as the last remnants of her beloved oak vanished into the dumpster, taking a piece of her heart with it. As the cleanup crew packed up their tools and prepared to leave, a sleek black sedan pulled into the driveway. The driver's side door swung open, and a tall, well-dressed man stepped out, his face set in a stern expression. Dr. Emerson. Natalie gasped, recognizing the renowned botanist from the local university. "What are you doing here?" The scientist strode forward, his gaze fixed on the HOA president. "I received an emergency call about the unlawful removal of a rare protected tree species on this property," he said, his voice laced with barely contained fury. "I'm here to put a stop to this outrage and ensure that the proper authorities are notified." Margaret's face paled, and she took a step back. "This is a private matter," she stammered. "The tree was deemed a safety hazard, and we followed all the necessary." "Lies." Dr. Emerson cut her off, his eyes flashing with anger. "I've examined this tree myself, and it was a thriving, healthy specimen. There was no justification for its removal, let alone without a permit." The HOA president opened her mouth to protest, but the arrival of a police car silenced her. As the officers approached, Dr. Emerson turned to Natalie, his expression softening. "Don't worry, Ms. Langford," he said. "We're going to get to the bottom of this, and I'll make sure the HOA is held accountable for their unlawful actions." Natalie could only nod, her heart pounding with a mixture of relief and trepidation. The battle to save her tree had only just begun. The next day, Natalie sat across from Dr. Emerson in his office at the university, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The botanist had insisted on meeting with her privately to discuss the situation further. "Thank you for coming, Ms. Langford," he said, his voice calm and measured. "I wanted to go over what we know so far and see if there's anything else you can tell me that might help our case." Natalie took a deep breath, trying to collect her thoughts. "Well, as I told the police, the HOA showed up unannounced with chainsaws and a crane. They said the tree was a safety hazard and that they had no choice but to remove it." Dr. Emerson nodded thoughtfully. "That's what I suspected. But as I mentioned, my examination of the tree revealed no such safety concerns. In fact, it was a remarkably healthy and thriving specimen." He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Which leads me to believe that the HOA had ulterior motives for wanting this tree gone." Natalie's heart raced. "Ulterior motives? You mean they lied about the safety hazard?" "Precisely," the botanist replied. "And I intend to find out why." He reached into a folder on his desk and produced a stack of photos. "These were taken by one of my students just before the tree was removed. Take a look." Natalie's breath caught in her throat as she studied the images. The tree was magnificent, its branches reaching skyward in a graceful arc. But what caught her eye were the small, delicate flowers nestled among the leaves. Those rare orchids, Dr. Emerson interrupted, a grim expression on his face. Highly valuable on the black market. And it seems the HOA was well aware of their presence. Natalie felt a chill run down her spine. You think they wanted the tree gone to steal orchids? The botanist nodded. It's the only logical explanation. They likely knew the tree was a protected species and couldn't simply cut it down without a permit. So they fabricated the safety hazard story to justify its removal. Anger flared within Natalie, and she clenched her fists. Those bastards. They destroyed my tree just to get their hands on some rare flowers. Dr. Emerson held up a hand, his expression solemn. I'm afraid it gets worse. According to the police report, the orchids have already disappeared. The HOA managed to spirit them away before the authorities arrived. Natalie felt a wave of despair wash over her. Her beloved tree, reduced to a pile of wood and the target of a twisted scheme. And the rare, beautiful flowers that had called it home were gone, lost forever. What do we do now? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The botanist's gaze hardened. We fight back. I'm going to use every resource at my disposal to expose the HOA's unlawful actions and ensure they face the consequences. Natalie nodded, a newfound determination burning in her chest. I'm with you. This isn't over yet. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity as Natalie and Dr. Emerson worked tirelessly to build their case against the HOA. They pored over records, interviewed neighbors, and enlisted the help of local environmental groups, all while the HOA remained tight-lipped and unapologetic. Natalie couldn't help but feel a sense of dread as she watched the HOA president, Margaret, stroll through the neighborhood with an air of smug self-assurance. It was as if she knew something the rest of them didn't. One afternoon, as Natalie was returning home from a meeting with Dr. Emerson, she noticed a strange car parked in front of her house. Her heart raced as she recognized the driver. It was Martin, the HOA's attorney. Steeling her nerves, she approached the car, determined to confront him. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. Martin looked up, a malicious grin spreading across his face. "Ah, Ms. Langford. I was just stopping by to deliver a message from the HOA." Natalie felt a knot of dread form in the pit of her stomach. What kind of message? Well, you see, the HOA has decided to take a more proactive approach in this matter. Martin replied, his tone dripping with condescension. They're not too pleased with the witch hunt you and your botanist friend have been conducting. Natalie's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Let's just say that the HOA has a few tricks up its sleeve. And if you and Dr. Emerson don't back off, well, Martin's gaze turned cold. Let's just say the consequences could be quite unpleasant. Natalie felt her blood run cold. Are you threatening me? Not at all, Martin said, his smile widening. I'm simply delivering a friendly warning. The HOA values its reputation, and they're not going to let a couple of troublemakers ruin it. With that, he started the car and pulled away, leaving Natalie standing on the sidewalk, her heart pounding in her chest. As she hurried inside, she couldn't shake the feeling that the HOA was planning something sinister. She knew they were desperate to cover up their tracks, but she never imagined they would stoop to outright intimidation. Grabbing her phone, she quickly dialed Dr. Emerson's number. "Doctor, we have a problem," she said, her voice shaking. "The HOA just sent their attorney to threaten me. I think they're getting ready to fight back, and I'm not sure what they're capable of." The botanist's voice was grave. "I was afraid of this. It seems the HOA is willing to go to any lengths to protect their precious reputation. But we can't back down now. We have to keep pushing forward, no matter what they throw at us." Natalie took a deep breath, steeling her resolve. "Okay, what's our next move?" "We're going to take this to the media, Dr. Emerson declared. It's time to expose the HOA's dirty tactics and rally the community to our side. Natalie nodded, a newfound determination burning in her chest. Let's do it. The following day, Natalie and Dr. Emerson stood before a small group of reporters, their faces etched with a mix of determination and apprehension. They had called this press conference to shine a spotlight on the HOA's misdeeds, and the tension in the air was palpable. As the camera started rolling, Dr. Emerson stepped forward, his voice clear and unwavering. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here today. We've called this press conference to expose the unlawful and unethical actions of the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the assembled journalists. As you may know, the HOA recently ordered the removal of a rare protected oak tree from Ms. Natalie Langford's property. However, this was not done for legitimate safety reasons, as they claimed. Natalie felt a surge of emotion as she watched the botanist lay out the evidence. The photographs of the rare orchids, the missing flowers, and the HOA's blatant disregard for proper protocols. The truth is, Dr. Emerson continued, the HOA was well aware of the presence of these valuable, protected orchids on Ms. Langford's property, and they deliberately orchestrated the tree's removal in order to steal them for their own profit. A collective gasp swept through the crowd, and hands shot up as the reporters began firing questions. Natalie stepped forward, her voice steady and resolute. The HOA's actions were not only illegal, but they were a blatant violation of my rights as a homeowner. They destroyed a beloved and irreplaceable part of my property without any regard for the consequences. She turned to face the cameras, her eyes blazing with conviction. I'm here today to demand that the HOA be held accountable for their crimes. They cannot be allowed to abuse their power and trample on the rights of the very people they are meant to serve. The barrage of questions continued, and Natalie and Dr. Emerson responded with unwavering confidence, laying out the details of their case and the evidence they had gathered. As the press conference drew to a close, Natalie couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. They had taken the first crucial step in exposing the HOA's misdeeds, and she knew that the power of the media could be a formidable weapon in their fight. But even as she basked in the glow of the cameras, she couldn't shake the sense of unease that had been gnawing at her since her confrontation with the HOA's attorney. She knew that the battle was far from over, and that the HOA was likely plotting their next move. As she and Dr. Emerson left the venue, Natalie couldn't help but wonder what the future had in store. One thing was certain, she was more determined than ever to see this fight through to the end. In the days following the press conference, Natalie and Dr. Emerson found themselves at the center of a media firestorm. Their story had captured the public's imagination, with news outlets across the country reporting on the HOA's alleged misdeeds. The coverage had an immediate impact, with local authorities pledging to launch a full investigation into the matter. Natalie couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph as she watched the tide of public opinion turn against the HOA. However, the HOA was not about to go down without a fight. Determined to protect their reputation and their illicit orchid operation, they launched a calculated counter-offensive. First, they issued a scathing press release denouncing Natalie and Dr. Emerson as disgruntled troublemakers who were spreading lies and misinformation. They claimed that the tree's removal was a necessary safety measure and that the orchids had been accidentally destroyed during the process. The statement was quickly picked up by the media, and soon the airwaves were flooded with dueling narratives, leaving the public unsure of who to believe. Undeterred, Natalie and Dr. Emerson doubled down on their efforts, reaching out to local politicians and environmental advocacy groups for support. They knew that they needed to keep the pressure on the HOA if they were going to succeed in their quest for justice. But the HOA had one more trick up their sleeve. They dispatched their attorney, Martin, to Natalie's doorstep once again, this time with a stark warning. Ms. Langford, I'm here to inform you that the HOA has decided to take legal action against you and Dr. Emerson, he announced, his tone dripping with disdain. You've made some very serious accusations, and they're not taking them lightly. Natalie felt her heart skip a beat, but she refused to back down. You can't intimidate me, Martin. We have the evidence to support our claims, and we're not going to stop until the truth comes out. The attorney's lips curled into a sinister smile. Oh, I think you'll find that the HOA has a few tricks up its sleeve. They're prepared to fight this battle in court, and they won't hesitate to use every resource at their disposal to bury you. Natalie felt a chill run down her spine, but she refused to show her fear. Bring it on, she spat. We're not going anywhere. As Martin turned and walked away, Natalie couldn't help but feel a sense of trepidation. She knew that the HOA was not going to go down without a fight, and she feared that the legal battle that lay ahead could be even more daunting than the one they had already faced. But with Dr. Emerson by her side and the support of the community, Natalie was determined to see this through to the bitter end. The legal battle between Natalie, Dr. Emerson, and the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association quickly escalated into a high-stakes war of attrition. The HOA had mobilized its considerable resources, hiring a team of top-notch lawyers and launching a PR blitz to discredit the pair. In the courtroom, the HOA's attorneys wasted no time in painting Natalie and Dr. Emerson as vindictive troublemakers, accusing them of fabricating evidence and exaggerating the facts. They argued that the tree's removal had been a necessary safety measure and that the orchids had been accidentally destroyed in the process. Natalie and Dr. Emerson, however, were equally determined to expose the HOA's misdeeds. They presented a mountain of evidence, including detailed reports from botanists and environmental experts, as well as sworn testimonies from eyewitnesses. The judge, a no-nonsense veteran of the bench, listened intently to the arguments on both sides. It was clear that she was not going to be swayed by the HOA's aggressive tactics or their attempts to sway public opinion. As the trial wore on, the tension in the courtroom was palpable. Natalie found herself on the edge of her seat, her heart pounding with each new revelation or accusation. She knew that the fate of her beloved tree and the rare orchids that had once called it home hung in the balance. In a dramatic twist, Dr. Emerson managed to produce a key piece of evidence that had been previously overlooked: a secret recording of conversation between the HOA president and the local landscape company that had carried out the tree's removal. The recording, which was played in open court, revealed a chilling conversation in which the HOA president instructed the landscapers to make sure that orchids are disposed of and to leave no trace of their existence. The courtroom erupted in gasps and murmurs, and the HOA's attorneys scrambled to mount a defense. But the damage had been done, and the judge's expression hardened as she listened to the damning recording. In a stunning turn of events, the judge ruled in favor of Natalie and Dr. Emerson, declaring the HOA's actions to be unlawful, unethical, and a clear violation of the rights of the property owner. The HOA was ordered to pay a hefty fine and to publicly acknowledge their wrongdoing, a humiliating blow to their carefully curated image. Natalie and Dr. Emerson, meanwhile, were hailed as heroes, their unwavering determination and commitment to the truth having triumphed over the HOA's attempts to cover up their misdeeds. As Natalie left the courthouse, she couldn't help but feel a sense of bittersweet relief. The tree was gone, and the rare orchids had been lost forever. But in the end, justice had been served, and the HOA's abuse of power had been exposed for all to see. In the aftermath of the trial, Natalie and Dr. Emerson found themselves the center of a media frenzy. News outlets from across the country clamored to interview them, eager to learn more about the David and Goliath battle that had played out in the courtroom. Natalie, who had once been a quiet, unassuming member of the Whispering Pines community, found herself thrust into the spotlight. She handled the attention with grace and poise, using the platform to shine a light on the broader issue of HOA overreach and the importance of protecting the environment. Dr. Emerson, for his part, reveled in the opportunity to educate the public about the value of rare and endangered species. He made it his mission to ensure that the destruction of the rare orchids would not be in vain. and he worked tirelessly to establish a new conservation program in the community. But even as Natalie and Dr. Emerson basked in the glow of their victory, they knew that the battle was far from over. The HOA, humiliated and furious, was not about to let the matter rest. In a brazen act of retaliation, the HOA launched a campaign of harassment and intimidation against Natalie and her family. Anonymous phone calls, vandalism, and even threats of violence became a regular occurrence, leaving Natalie on edge and constantly looking over her shoulder. Dr. Emerson, ever the tireless advocate, refused to be cowed by the HOA's tactics. He worked closely with local law enforcement to document each incident and to build a case against the HOA leadership. As the pressure mounted, the HOA's own internal divisions began to surface. Some of the more moderate members of the association grew increasingly uncomfortable with the aggressive and unethical actions of their leadership, and they began to speak out against the ongoing harassment. Sensing an opportunity, Natalie and Dr. Emerson reached out to these dissenters, offering to work together to reform the HOA from within. After weeks of tense negotiations, a compromise was reached. The HOA would undergo a complete overhaul, with new leadership and a renewed commitment to serving the community rather than abusing their power. In a final act of defiance, the newly reformed HOA pledged to work with Natalie and Dr. Emerson to establish a memorial garden in honor of the lost oak tree and the rare orchids that had once graced its branches. It was a bittersweet victory, but one that nonetheless brought a sense of closure and healing to the community. As Natalie surveyed the newly planted saplings and the delicate orchids that had been carefully transplanted, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. The battle had been long and arduous, but in the end, the power of persistence and the pursuit of justice had prevailed. In the years that followed, Natalie and Dr. Emerson's battle against the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association became the stuff of legend. Their story was recounted in news articles, academic journals, and even a best-selling book, inspiring others to stand up against abuses of power and fight for their rights. The memorial garden that they had helped establish became a beloved community hub, a living testament to the power of resilience and the importance of protecting the natural world. Visitors from near and far would come to admire the rare orchids that thrived in the carefully curated space, their delicate blooms a reminder of the extraordinary efforts it took to save them. Natalie, once a quiet and unassuming resident, had blossomed into a fierce advocate and community leader. She worked tirelessly to educate others about the dangers of HOA overreach and the importance of environmental conservation, using her newfound platform to inspire change on a local and national level. Dr. Emerson, too, had seen his career soar in the wake of the high-profile case. He became a sought-after expert on rare and endangered species, lecturing at universities and consulting with governments and conservation organizations around the world. But he never forgot the lesson he had learned from his fight alongside Natalie, that the battle for justice and environmental stewardship was one that required unwavering dedication and a willingness to take on even the most powerful adversaries. As for the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association, it had undergone a complete transformation. The new leadership, chastened by the public backlash and the legal consequences of their actions, had embraced a more inclusive and community-oriented approach. They worked closely with Natalie and Dr. Emerson to establish new policies and protocols that prioritized the rights of homeowners and the preservation of the local environment. In the end, the story of the too rare tree had become a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that the pursuit of power and profit could never justify the destruction of the natural world. And for Natalie and Dr. Emerson, it was a triumph of the human spirit, a testament to the power of determination, courage, and the unwavering belief that even the mightiest of foes could be brought to heel. As the sun set on the memorial garden, Natalie couldn't help but feel a sense of peace and contentment. The battle may have been won, but the work of protecting the environment and standing up against injustice was never done. And she knew that, with Dr. Emerson by her side, she was ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead.